Hi everyone and welcome to Untitled Chapter. We're really glad to have you with us tonight and for a teaching by Jetsunma, Ahkon, Lhamo. This teaching is part of the POA series on the transfer of consciousness at the time of death, or as it was titled, Conscious Living and Dying. This is part 6. It's about Amitabha and the Bardo of becoming. So you're already in the Bardo and this is part 6. So join us now.
First of all, both during the times of the appearances of the peaceful Buddhas and the wrathful Buddhas, if a person has practiced devotion to the point where they can call upon their spiritual mentor, their guru, and recognize the touch or the scent or the smell or the appearance or the method of their guru as being present, if one can call on their guru, they will be liberated through devotion, through seeing the guru. But you have to remember, to the degree that your devotion is as much a part, is a guiding force and a strength in your life now, that means not much yet. More devotion needs to be practiced. So, even more so in the case of the Bardo of becoming. When one is bound to go into the 6 realms of cyclic existence, one will surely take rebirth in the 6 realms unless one is somehow at that time able to recall the words of the teacher, the practice of the teacher, the kindness of the teacher. One is able to reach out for the teacher. One is able to recall and bring to oneself the mindfulness of the teacher. Actually reach out for the teacher. In that bardo, the teacher can also appear and liberate. Still, through the force of devotion. Even then, that is the only exception. Otherwise, you will be born in the 6 realms of cyclic existence. But at that point, you still have much that you can do. Now, at that point, the bardo takes on what appears to be like 7-day cycles. And there are 7-day cycles of birth and death. They are very subtle kinds of expressions of the kind of death and rebirth that we have already experienced in the bardo. It's like a subtle going to sleep and forgetfulness, and then a re-emergence, a remembering that you are in the bardo, knowing that you are dead, and you begin to wander and search for life. At that point, you're actually wandering. You're moving closer to rebirth, so you have many of the faculties that you do in life. Consciousness, the kind that thinks, the kind that discriminates in a certain way, but not enough to where reality seems very solid. So that part of the bardo can be very frightening. It's very wispy, ghostly, but you have enough wherewithal to know that it's wispy and ghosty. It's kind of scary. And you see lots of different things that you have a harder time interpreting during this part of the bardo. But one of the things that you do see is that the person in the bardo is able to travel through, instantaneously anywhere through thought. And they don't know that. So what happens is many things come to your mind and you seem almost mentally incontinent and confused. Too many things. And at that point, the bardo becomes frightening enough where even lower rebirth seems to the person to be preferable to the confusion and kind of wishy-washiness that we're experiencing in the bardo. But the teaching at this time is that we are told, do not look for a place of safety during the time of becoming. When things become shady, when you appear to be wandering, when the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have not appeared, do not be afraid. Stay where you are. Do not exit. Remember the words of your teachers. Do not exit at that time. Stay where you are. Stay exactly where you are and call for the teachers, the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas to come to you. Do not exit. Call for the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to come to you. Call for your teacher. Remember that. I'm telling you this with directness and firmness to plant it firmly in your mind so you will not forget. Call where you are. Do not wander. Just as you wander in your practice and you wander in your life, going from spiritual teaching to spiritual teaching, thoughtlessly seeking without any intention of finding, that habit will cause you to wander again, thinking that you and you alone must find the way, can find the way. And it is you and you alone who will get yourself lost in truth. So stay where you are, calm the mind, be at peace, and call your teacher. Prepare your mind to recognize your teacher. That is what you should do at that time. And at that point, there is still the option of liberation. However, if at the very last you have no memory of your teacher, but you can remember one thing, at least of all the births and all the parents that are seen by you, and you will see many different parents, potential parents, animal parents, non-physical parents even. Look for those parents that are human, and at that time you should pray for an auspicious rebirth with human parents who will help you to meet the Dharma immediately. And you can make prayers at that time, and at that time they will be answered. But above and beyond every single effort that you might make, call to your teacher. And with that, and indistinguishable from that, at any time, any part of the Bardo, one can call for Lord Buddha Amitabha, because it is uniquely and singularly Lord Buddha Amitabha who will answer your prayers at the time of death and becoming, because he has taken that vow, because he has understood the sorrow that human beings are afflicted with, and his compassion is very great concerning this condition of sentient beings. And it is, in a way you could say that that's Amitabha's specialty. That Amitabha is especially moved by the plight of beings when they are lost and wandering like that. So you can call to your root guru, you can call to Lord Buddha Amitabha, and you can consider that they are the same and indistinguishable from one another. Now, having explained something of the Bardo of becoming and something of the appearance of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, I wish to change tactics somewhat, even though in a way we're not changing tactics. We're still talking about the blessings of the Buddhas in the Bardo state. And yet now we were going to talk specifically about Lord Buddha Amitabha. And we are going to talk about Amitabha specifically because he is the deity to whom you should give your trust and reliance at the time when you are considering death and rebirth. He is the Buddha who will be your salvation. He is the Buddha who is your salvation now, and in the future he will be your salvation. Furthermore, it is the Buddha Amitabha who has made possible the very practice of Poa, without whom there would be no Poa. It is Lord Buddha Amitabha who makes it possible through his wisdom for Poa to function for us the way that it does, and it is through him that Poa has appeared in the world. And it is his way to reach out and bless you with capacity to achieve the auspicious rebirth. That is the way that he's done it. This is his method. And so now we will talk about Lord Buddha Amitabha. First of all, when we think about the Buddhas, we should remember that we are not thinking about something outside of ourselves. And yet, do the Buddhas exist? Yes, they do. And yet, are they something that is not separate from our true nature? Yes, it is. How can that be? It can be. It is. And I can only answer your question by saying, how can it be that you do not know that? It can be that you do not know that because you are making a distinction between subjective and objective. And because that is the way your mind works, it is because you are existent in samsara as you are, And because throughout time, since time out of mind, since the idea of self-nature arose as one of the potentialities of the great all it is, it's one of the potentials that appears in the union, the non-duality of samsara and nirvana, the potential to become. And so since that potential exists, it exists, and we are that. And yet the fault of the condition is the way that we have experienced it. We have experienced the condition by developing an untrue and deluded kind of distinction. Self-nation is, we have the idea that we must define self-nature through separating it from other. Self and other appears to us to be different. And yet, it is absolutely the case that self-nature appears as it does now. We know that it appears. We can stick pins in ourselves and we can feel that it appears. We can prove that we are here and that we feel and that we are sensing beings in many different ways. That's not very hard to do. So it must, therefore, be possible that we can appear in this way with these kinds of senses and this kind of duality, and that nature is still the appearance of the Buddha and indistinguishable from the Buddha. If it were not so, that these two truths, the relative and absolute truth, could live indistinguishable from one another and be both true and inseparable from each other, and indistinguishable, then it would not be true for an ordinary practitioner to become a Buddha, as the Buddhas did. They were ordinary practitioners who became the Buddhas. That would not have been possible. Shakyamuni's result would not have been possible. Guru Rinpoche's result would not have been possible. You see? So these relative and absolute truth are then simultaneously existing and indistinguishable from one another, and yet we distinguish them. So it is true that Lord Buddha Amitabha is our very face, our very nature, our own true face. And yet it is also true that Lord Buddha Amitabha exists. And that is only necessary to say at this time because we exist in the way that we do, making that kind of distinction. So it is said then, on that very simplistic and superficial view, that Lord Buddha Amitabha exists in Dewa-chen, a pure land which is in the western direction from here. And so when we look to Lord Buddha Amitabha, do we look over there? Do we go that way when we die, do you hope? Should we start now walking in that direction? I mean, really, how long have we got? It's going to take a while to get there. What do you think? Of course, we can't view in that simple way. If we view in that simple way only, then we will have limited result and simple result. However, better than no result is that simple result. And since that is the extent to which most students can understand, that is acceptable. Better that result. Better to understand that Lord Buddha Amitabha is over there and I'm going that way because he is terrific. Or better to say, let's see, my teacher's over there, so if I want to do prostrations to my teacher, I'll do like that. So that's the kind of thinking that we have, and yet, and when you think, oh, it is superficial, maybe it's not enough, maybe it's not enlightened. But when you consider that that is such a superior view and a superior mental condition than is enjoyed by 99.9% of all of the beings in samsara, then you should know that that view is acceptable. However, perhaps you have the capacity for a deeper and more profound view. And in that case, you may understood that Lord Buddha Amitabha is the very capacity for the quality and enlightened potential of perfect equanimity. Lord Buddha Amitabha is that which is the most profound, innate, natural, primordial view that is free of the kind of distinction that we practice regularly. And it is that very distinction that causes us to remain bound on the wheel of suffering and death. It is the distinction that is associated with desire. It is a kind of distinction that causes us to say, well, see, over here maybe I have a pile of delicious chocolate. And over here I have a pile of yucky shit. You know? And in our ordinary view, we see, well, they're both brown, and they both have a very dramatic presentation, maybe. And maybe we could say that both of them have a very strong smell. But definitely, we would find that if we, that because of desire, and because desire is so much a part of us, we will naturally, and when's the last time you thought about doing this? You do this instinctively, reflexively, naturally. We will naturally be repelled by the shit and be attracted by the chocolate. Why? Because of desire. Not because of shit and chocolate. I mean, if you think about it, shit and chocolate in a different environment, the shit would be more valuable. I mean, if you think about it. If you are the kind of person that wants to plant a natural garden and needs to grow vegetables and doesn't have good, rich soil and depends on that for food, shit is as precious as gold. That's true. Did you know that? I mean, really, in third world countries, there are people that prize animal shit more than anything. I mean, as much as the very food that they grow using it. They prize that animal shit. It's precious. So this is like chocolate to them. They're going to wrap this up, keep it in a nice little patty, save it up for later. The chocolate wouldn't do them very much good. What good would the chocolate do them? Yeah, you could eat the chocolate, but you can't live on chocolate. You can get diabetes on chocolate, you can get acne on chocolate, but you can't live on chocolate. And you can plow the chocolate into the ground and see if it fertilizes the ground, and of course nothing will grow there because there's too much of the wrong kind of stuff. So chocolate becomes less potent and less precious than shit. But definitely, we will absolutely, because the nature is desire, we're in a desire nature now. Because of that, we will distinguish between the two, and one will be preferable. See, one will be preferable. Now, what about Amitabha? Amitabha is that very innate, primordial view where all things are seen with the same weight and the same taste. Now, you have to ask yourself what that really looks like, because the only thing that we can imagine is training ourselves in a way as to suppress our particular tastes. Isn't that true? I mean, you could train yourself to think that shit and chocolate are the same thing. You could. You could learn not to mind the smell or the look. You could learn to mind a little bit more chocolate. You could probably practice it to equal it out, but it would be a neurotic kind of practice. It's a different kind of, you could practice in such a way as to make one preferable to the other, you see, but it's not going to do you any good, because that is a neurotic kind of practice. It will be against what you are feeling, and the way that you will deal with your feeling is not through understanding or through awakening to wisdom, but instead you will be suppressing, literally suppressing a gag reflex. I mean, really. That's the kind of thing that you would be doing, and that would be neurotic. So that would be the ordinary samsaric view of what it must be like to have a lack of discrimination between shit and chocolate. But in fact, that's not what it is at all. What it is that we are talking about the subtle mind, which is the very mind of enlightenment. It's a very subtle mind. You see, it is free, first of all, of the heavy dross of desire and ego clinging. It is spontaneously liberated. It is liberated from all, it isn't even at the point of practicing renunciation. That is the fully awakened state where there is no desire. We are literally free from desire. Because of that, perception is different. You see, our eyes and our noses act the way they do, telling us which is shit and which is chocolate, because they are the outgrowth of our egos, and our egos are fundamentally desirous. So that's why our eyes and ears and nose and mouth tell us what they do. But in the case of that kind of wisdom of equanimity, Lord Buddha Amitabha does not have as the fundamental function or fundamental of the beginning of the movement of his perception, there is no desire there. It is not based on desire. It is supremely awakened. It is based on supreme awakening. Therefore, the view, literally the eyes, if you can imagine such a thing, of course they're not fleshy eyes, they do not see in the same way. One sees the essential nature. One sees the essential nature. They have the same taste. You see? That is the difference. Now what does that tell you about you? That should you be able to purify desire, then naturally this very same view would be awakened within you. So this is the incredible, amazing, and fantastical wisdom and ability of Lord Buddha Amitabha. So our cue then is that he, as our spiritual master and mentor, is that we should see him as a guide. We should see that he has thusly expressed to us and displayed to us the freedom and liberation which is brought about by the cessation of desire and the equanimity of view. And so we must understand that that is truly the nature of Lord Buddha Amitabha. He is one who has overcome that. Now, when we understand our own nature, we understand, as I have explained, that our samsaric nature and our enlightened nature, although they seem different to us, and in fact, seem very separate, we feel like we're walking a path toward our enlightenment. Isn't that a silly notion? Like walking a path toward our enlightenment, like it's out there somewhere. You know, maybe out west, like they said, you know. It's out there somewhere. Our enlightenment is out there somewhere. So we're walking the path to enlightenment. What a funny notion. And we think that our samsaric nature and our enlightened nature are in fact very far apart. We're trying to bridge the gap from one to the other. Well, you can't bridge the gap and you can't build a road because they are not separate. There is no distance between our samsaric nature and our enlightened nature. And even within the context of practicing POA, we think that must be an endless distance between here and Amitabha when we try to send our consciousness to Amitabha. It must be an endless distance. And it is that notion of endless distance as opposed to no distance, that kind of clinging discrimination that puts the obstacle in our path and makes it not possible for us to transfer the consciousness easily and quickly and instantly, which it should be, easy and quickly and instant. Why not? Where the heck are you going? You're not going far. That samsaric nature and that enlightened nature exist in the same place. They are the same reality. There is no separation. There is no distinction. And so that is the idea, the notion that we should begin to implement using Lord Buddha Amitabha as our guide. So, let's see. There are those of us that perhaps have trouble with the idea of a spiritual guide or a spiritual mentor, and that is because of our own ignorance. Our own ignorance precludes our ability to have pure view. In our ignorance, we see in our spiritual guides and mentors the same limitations, faults, and flaws that are our limitations, faults, and flaws. And in fact, we learn a lot about ourselves by learning how we perceive our spiritual mentors. There's a mirror kind of image that comes back there. And you can count on it. Write it down, count on it, tattoo across your forehead. The same faults that you find in your spiritual mentors are your faults. There's no way that it's any other way. These are the faults of yourself. Now, we ask ourselves now, how can we have faith in Lord Buddha Amitabha just because she says so? We're not even sure about her. So here we have Lord Buddha Amitabha. Why should we believe her? I haven't even seen him. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Lord Buddha Amitabha so that you can have a little bit of confidence. And if you don't have confidence in me, I don't blame you. I don't know what to say. Too bad, that's your karma. Good luck. Be seeing ya. Lord Buddha Amitabha is considered to be that one who once looked upon the suffering of sentient beings as he was becoming Buddha, as he was moving into his fully enlightened state. And he looked down and he saw the condition of sentient beings, and he began to cry. And he grieved in a terrible way, and it was a kind of grieving that one can only understand if one has tasted the food of enlightenment, if one has tasted enlightenment, and then looked at the condition and suffering of sentient beings and truly seen the difference. There is no other grief like that. One cannot understand that kind of grief. It is unlike losing a loved one or even losing one's own life. The grief that one will feel having tasted the natural bliss, the natural birthright that is your true nature, and then watching that while that is so, it is also so that sentient beings are suffering horribly, and watching that they are suffering uselessly and senselessly, and that they are suffering because of their own ignorance, that they are making themselves suffer and making their own mistakes, and that all they would have to do is stop. There is no grief that is stronger or more complete than that, to know from the vantage point of bliss what sentient beings suffer. And so Lord Buddha Amitabha gave rise to the most profound bodhicitta, the most profound kind of compassion, a compassion that colored him, that dictated his method, a compassion that filled his intention, that became his intention. And the compassion was so strong and dominating that he made the most profound wishes, and he made those wishes not as we would make wishes when we circumambulate the stupa, even when we make wishes with faith, but he made those wishes from the potency of his enlightened accomplishment. He had fully accomplished the view of non-distinction. He had fully accomplished the primordial wisdom view of equanimity. He had fully accomplished the ability to see the nature that is the nature of all sentient beings. He had fully accomplished the ability to see the lack of separation between oneself and others. And so when Amitabha looked to the plight of samsaric beings, he began to cry. And it was his very tears, they say, that became the emanation which is Chenrezig, the Buddha that speaks, that gave us the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, that keeps us from falling into the lower realms. That is how strong and how forceful his grief for sentient beings actually were. And so Lord Buddha Amitabha actually practiced in such a way as to set up a pure land called Dewa Chen, which is the easiest of all the pure lands to enter into. And it is meant to be a home, a welcoming place, a source of refuge for those of us who have met with samsara and have been so damaged and hurt and traumatized and deluded and have continued so much in our own habitual tendency without any understanding of what samsara actually is, that we have become almost drunk beyond repair. To where even though we too are that nature which is indistinguishable, that indistinguishable nature that is both the enlightened potential, the enlightened nature, and the samsaric nature, while we too have that Buddhist seed, yet we are so deluded and so wrapped up in the delusion that while it is potentially so, you can also say it is almost impossible to expect or to hope for that any of us might attain the other Buddha fields. The other Buddha fields are associated with the kinds of accomplishment that sentient beings are very rarely able to have. And Lord Buddha Amitabha saw that, and he wept and grieved for those students who would be prevented due to their circumstances. And he was angry and would not accept that some sentient beings would be excluded because of their inability to practice. And he became extremely angry and extremely upset that some sentient beings would be excluded because of their ignorance and their slothfulness. And he became extremely angry and extremely upset that some sentient beings would be excluded because they had not understood devotion. And he became so upset with these things that he practiced in such a way that the very nature of his Pure Land is easy to enter into. There is an ease of passage. And he made it his work from this point until all sentient beings are finished. This is his work from now until all of us are finished. Think of that. That he would be available constantly. And he doesn't have office hours either. This is the great thing. He would be available constantly. I have office hours. Lord Buddha Amitabha does not have office hours. No, just kidding. Lord Buddha Amitabha has said that he will always be available for those beings that cry out for him. And literally, if in the Bardo, if you can remember to cry out for him once, and to call his name and to ask him to come and rescue you, surely he will come. He will not be able to ignore your voice. He will not be able to keep away from you. He will come. And the way that he has set up his Pure Land, it will be very easy for you to follow only on that small cry. He's like a mother. He's so tuned to the cry of the babies that only the slightest whimper, that's no effort at all on your part, will invoke his great compassion. And so therefore you can have confidence and faith and trust in Amitabha. He is as sensitive as your own mother was when she heard you breathing and whimpering in your crib when you were unable to fend for yourself. He is like that. And furthermore, Lord Buddha Amitabha has also given us this practice, and he has made his very body, his very nature, accepting of us to the degree that he is instrumental in the transference of our consciousness. And so while his body is subtle, while his body is pure, still somehow he connects with us in a mystical way that we cannot understand, and uses his very appearance, his very nature, as a vehicle to carry us into bliss. And it is because he is so frightfully sad for the suffering of sentient beings who have no hope and have no method and have such strong habitual tendency that is weighing them down. He is the kindest, the purest. There is no other Buddha like him. He is completely unsurpassed. There is nothing and no one that can meet the kindness and the quality of Lord Buddha Amitabha. He should be considered your singular protector. And you should think that his face is always turned toward you, and that all you have to do, like a little baby, is to follow the voice of your mother. A little baby learns very early on where the milk comes from, and learns to follow the voice of its mother. And so in this way you should understand that the nectar of Lord Buddha Amitabha is all-pervasive and is easily digested, even for those of us that have no will to take care of ourselves or to befriend ourselves in a firm and disciplined way. Lord Buddha Amitabha is such that he will not only offer you the nectar and the milk of loving kindness, but he would also take it into his own mouth and digest it within his own body and give it to you in that way, already digested. That is the kindness and the nature of Lord Buddha Amitabha. You can have complete faith and trust in him. He does not prefer Tibetans. He does not prefer any one kind. He has developed his practice to the point where he has eyes and ears and helping hands that extend in every direction. And right now he hears your voice, and there is no sentient being that is separate from his hearing. Even if the tiniest bird were capable of calling out his name, even if the tiniest of creatures, the meanest of worms, has any connection with Lord Buddha Amitabha, he will try in his way to resonate with that creature so that they will have a chance. He is extremely, active, extremely persistent in benefiting sentient beings. And when it comes to those of us who have practiced very little and are not very confident, he is our sole guide and mentor and hope when it comes the time for our own death. So that when we see ourselves moving our consciousness into Amitabha, we should think that we are moving ourselves into something that is strange or separate or unfamiliar or unpleasant. We should think that we are going home. We should think that we are going to our own kind mother. We should think that we are going to our own truest heart. We should think that we are bathing in our own true nature. And so there is nothing foreign or unfamiliar or strange or unfriendly about Lord Buddha Amitabha. He is your greatest hope. And if you remember no other image in your life, if you can never call out to your teacher, if you cannot do anything, if you are utterly and completely helpless when it comes to your practice, then please at least remember the kindness of Amitabha, because he will remember you. So you should think like that. Lord Buddha Amitabha has developed his practice so that he himself is the doorway to liberation. It is through he himself that we can pass, because he himself has made himself available. Coincidentally, it is also true that the practice of the wisdom of equanimity is often one of the first accomplishments that we can practice through meditation. Interestingly, when we sit and practice simple meditation like shamatha, our translator says, shamatha! I think he thinks he's in a Japanese steakhouse. What do you think? Shamatha! This is a teaching that some of us are listening to. You may not understand. We have a translator who is very fond of hearing his voice. He goes to shamatha when he practices. Bodhicitta! I can't wait to meet this man so I can tease the hell out of him. So even a simple meditation like the meditation on like shamatha meditation, we can think shamatha. We can think that in that meditation it is possible to practice the wisdom of equanimity. We can begin to, in a simple, quiet meditation like that, or even just watching the breath, or simply letting the attention rest lightly on space, which is a very simple and very wonderful meditation that all of us should practice in order to help our minds not be so heavy and fixated on samsara the way it is, but to keep the attention just lightly resting on space. One then begins to awaken immediately to the wisdom of equanimity in a small and subtle way, and then gradually through that kind of practice one progresses. So you see, even then, it is Lord Buddha Amitabha's wish that that should be the most easy and most accessible method for us. That we should be able to firmly and easily, even those of us that are not excellent practitioners, move toward his nature, move toward our nature, move toward Dewachen. And it is through Lord Buddha Amitabha's practice that he has reached out through us. He has reached out through us through making his practice such that it is easy for us, and in a way he has greased. How can I say this? How can I make this make sense to you? It's almost like if you could understand the philosophy of burning the candle on both ends, that what is happening on one side is also happening on the other side, from our point of view. But in truth, there are no two sides. It only appears that way. Someday, some scientist is going to come up with something in quantum physics that will be a mathematical formula that will help some of you to understand that this is how reality actually is. This is what actually is. That it is possible for Lord Buddha Amitabha to practice in such a way as to grease our wheels, to practice in such a way as to create a chute in a way that we can just sled down, in a sense, an easy access, a very a very opened method, a very accessible method, that could be a truth. And it could also be a truth when I say that perhaps in a simple meditation one could easily develop the wisdom of equanimity. These are not two separate statements, they are the same statement. When you turn to Lord Buddha Amitabha, ultimately you are turning to your own kind nature. Ultimately you are turning to that to which you will awaken. Ultimately you are turning to that with which you will know again or awaken to, become cognizant of the connection. His nature is that of compassion. His nature is that of ultimate depth beyond which depth that we cannot fathom, the depth that is the true empty nature, that is our nature. And it is Lord Buddha Amitabha upon whom we can rely as a bridge that is easily crossed between ignorance and bliss.
So thank you so very much for joining us. We're always so happy to be presenting these teachings because we always learn so much from them as well, and we hope you do too. So this week has been a pretty busy week here at KPC. We did a lot of practices last weekend, dedicated particularly to the world situation and to the suffering in Ukraine, but also just to the general suffering of everybody. And I think we're pretty toasted by it all. But never mind that. We're happy to let you know that on Friday, Chotrul Duchen will be celebrated here. Chotrul Duchen is one of the 4 main holidays in the Tibetan Buddhist calendar, and it is the day of turning of the wheel, or I always get them backwards. Core is turning of the wheel. Okay, so it's the day of miracles. It's the Buddha had a day where he presented so many miracles to help bring about the faith in people who were his students. And so that day is one of the main holidays we celebrate it, and there's a lot of extra merit associated with it. So if you happen to be nearby and think about coming by, please do. We have so much space outside where you can, have devotional activity and celebrate this time. And hopefully soon we will be open inside, but not quite yet. But meanwhile, all of our activities are available online as well. So our regular practices include on Saturday and Sunday, we have meditation at 10 a.m. on YouTube. And that's led by one of our nuns. All these times are Eastern time, New York time. If you're somewhere else in the world, you can look up New York and figure out where your time is. And then on every evening at 7 p.m., we have a very short and in English Medicine Buddha practice that began at the beginning of the pandemic and has been going on every day since then. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring your dedications, to bring your concerns and the people that you worry about, and even yourself, because we all worry about ourselves sometimes. And you can put those into the practice, and you can feel supported by the people that are there, and those prayers, get joined with so many others, and the benefit is magnified. So join us for that every day on Facebook. It's Kunsang Payol Choling on Facebook, and you can do that. Let me see. There's also let me see. Finally, I found my notes. If you want to make a stronger connection to Jetsunma, and you'd like to make a donation directly to her, you can certainly do so. I'm about to put this in chat, because then you don't have to listen to me and wonder what I just said. That PayPal account address is jetsumagift@gmail.com. And so you can use that to make an offering to her directly. It will go directly to her. I also put in some other links where you can find out more about us, our main website link, and you can always email us at kpc@tara.org with any questions or anything that you want, and it'll get directed to somebody who can answer. What else do I have here? I have these teachings on the transfer of consciousness. This is part 6. There are 8 parts, so there will be 2 more on Wednesdays. We do Jetsunma's teachings. We show teachings from the past on both Wednesday evening at 7:30 and Sundays at 11 a.m. So the ones on Wednesday right now will be the next 2 teachings on POA here that follow up on this one. You can also find them archived on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/kunsangpayolcholing, all one word. And you can, look at them there. And there's a playlist called POWA, PHOWA. I'm going to spell that because I think that it's spelled differently everywhere you go around the world. And this is how it's spelled on our website. So, that is your playlist, and you can find them all there if you're not finding the ones that you wanted here. So in addition, there's lots of other teachings that Jetsunma has given. We're working on dividing them into topics, but right now you can just kind of look through the titles and see what appeals to you. And we hope that you enjoy her teachings. Also, Atira has been teaching. Atira is her daughter and heart student, and her teachings are different, of course, but equally wonderful in their clarity, their simplicity, their humor, and their use of examples that you would know. We're not listening to parables here. We've got true examples in our lives today. So, and she is very good. And she's been teaching a class called Buddhism for Beginners, and it's on Sundays. I believe that it's currently on a hiatus right now for a couple months, and then she'll be back teaching. But all of them are archived on YouTube, so you can check them out. They're very, very good. They give you a really good idea of what the basic precepts are in Buddhism, and in a really simple and easy to understand kind of way. So join us for all of this online and all of this just anywhere. And please come back. We miss you. We want you to stay safe. Do come to the temple anytime during the daylight hours. The outside, as I say, is open, and there are beautiful statues and stupas, and just the peace and the energy is amazing, and you will love it, I hope. So take care, and thanks again.